This is Practice with Krista and Kayla, a podcast in which we talk about practice of various kinds.
Missed out all the times we had together. Think of whether we would actually have our time.
Welcome back to another episode. This week we're talking about bedtimes. So, Kayla, you came to me. Bedtimes are tough. We just like bedtimes. And you sent me an article from the New York Times that has a good... And I love these articles. I've read so many of the same article telling me the same things I should do to have a good bedtime. And I have listened to many things. And so we'll get into this in more detail later. But we figured we'd start this episode by kind of talking about the research around sleep that's out there that we've seen and what our goals for our bedtime routine has been as we've tried to change them the past few weeks.
We have this one article that we're kind of referring to that. I mean, there's so many articles like this, but this particular one is in the New York Times. It came out in March 25th, so right when we were going into lockdown. It's called How to Get More Sleep Tonight. It's written by Adam Popescu. And basically what it's talking about is like creating and maintaining a consistent sleep practice and schedule that works for you so that you can get good sleep and be healthy and well and keep the anxiety at bay and all the good stuff with bedtimes.
Oh, the anxiety.
So some of these tips are like set a hard curfew for all electronics, stay informed but don't look at the news right before bed. I'm just reading like the subheaders from this. Move your body, raise your heart rate every day, but not too soon before bedtime. Try some meditation. Don't eat before bed. Don't drink yourself to sleep. Take a bath or a shower an hour and a half before bed. Get into clean, nice sheets.
Love clean sheets.
Those are some of the tips for, apparently it's like real important that you sleep. So according to this article, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine recommends 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm quoting from this article. A 2015 study found a direct link between shorter sleep times and an increased risk of getting a cold for healthy adults aged 18 to 55. Specifically, those sleeping less than 5 hours or between 5 and 6 hours had a greater likelihood of catching a virus than those sleeping for 7 hours a night. The science is simple. A good night's sleep supports the release and production of cytokine, a protein that helps the immune system quickly respond to antigens, foreign substances which cause the body's immune response to kick in, according to Dr. Medley. So apparently missing as little as 16 minutes of sleep tonight could harm your cognitive functioning tomorrow, since shifting sleep rhythms can slow or speed up our body's internal clocks, which basically has the same effect as not getting enough sleep.
Which is crazy to me, how much we rely on like unplugging and becoming comatose or unconscious every single day.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
We have to power down. And it's really interesting to me, like in this article, I mean, I think the first header it says is like, maintaining a sleep practice. Like I'd never thought of sleeping or bedtimes as a kind of a practice, but just a sort of like thing that you have to do and eventually succumb to sleep every night, and not as like a thing that you should, nurture and sustain and do intentionally.
Yeah. That I mean, we've had this focusing on our bedtime as a assignment for our practice-based podcast, but I hadn't even thought of that. I don't think I'd read the headline, and I think that's a shift in how I frame going to sleep that I need to do. Because, I mean, looking at this, also something that really stuck out to me, other than the quote that you just pulled out, which is, we are so sensitive to how much sleep we're getting, is just that, like, setting curfews for things is really important, and that's really hard for me. And something that is, like, I'm really good at being like, all right, my phone's not going to be in here. I'm not going to have screens. I'm not going to, like, things where it has to do with more, like, physical things going in a different place than the bedroom. I've got that on lock. Saying, oh, it's time to go to bed. My body's like, no.
So
not right now.
So how would you describe, like, your current? Well, okay, so your sleep practice before our, like, this assignment that we've given ourselves for the past couple of weeks.
My bedtime, before we decided to discuss our bedtimes and try to improve upon them, very much no screens. I have no TV in my bedroom. I don't allow my laptop in there, except for during the day. If I'm, like, watching a YouTube video and decide to clean my closet, then I'll bring my laptop in. There are always exceptions to the rules. And I started at the beginning of quarantine taking CBD tinctures every night to help with sleep, which I found just to help with, like, the soundness of sleep and getting to bed. I've been a chronic insomniac for as long as I can remember. I'm like someone who just stays up late and gets bursts of energy late at night, and then my body just wants to wake up late. So it's kind of always in a state of, like, trying to course correct that to fit in with society. But even before we did this, I started doing morning meditation classes, and that was getting me up, and then my bedtime was weird because I would all of a sudden was getting really sleepy at, like, 11 o'clock at night, and would just kind of, like, fall asleep. And I also hadn't had anything at the beginning of quarantine, and something that I wanted to, like, course correct away from was reading the news right before bed. I would bring my phone into bed with me and would just be on a, like, death scroll. There's a, like, internet term for it now that I can't remember. But a death scroll or an anxiety scroll, it's something like that. And, like, so that's kind of how I would fall asleep. And there weren't many books or anything that I was really I wasn't even able to read at the beginning of quarantine. I just, like, couldn't focus. So, I mean, I answered your question and then kind of teased what my bedtime goals were for the past 2 weeks.
Well, I think what I've realized is that I did not have a bedtime practice. I didn't have one before before we started talking about this stuff. And I didn't have one growing up. Like, I never had a routine. And for the past few months, it was just like, sleep, bedtime, going to bed was just a kind of eventuality of the day when I couldn't finally continue to outrun bedtime. Like, it just was it was like a thing that I knew was supposed to happen, but that I wasn't, like, doing intentionally. Like, and I, like, got in bed and did the, brushed my teeth and washed my face and got into pajamas. It wasn't like I was falling asleep standing up, but it was like a thing that I knew I had to do, but it was always with dread. Yeah. So I think I realized, like, I do not have a bedtime practice. And so this past couple of weeks has been a really nice little, like, experiment in trying on a bedtime practice. And it's not like the rigorous, like, I don't do all the things, but the one thing that I've discovered is melatonin. I love melatonin. Melatonin is bae. Melatonin has changed it all for me. It has changed everything. And I know this isn't necessarily like a bedtime practice, but for me it was enabled a practice.
That's important, the
nice.
things that enable a practice.
Yeah.
God, melatonin
Yeah.
I've never tried melatonin. I gotta get on that train.
Oh, it's so good. You just are sleepy. It just makes you sleepy. And it's so nice. It's like, yeah. So what I've started doing every night consistently is I will and we talked about this earlier, but also like getting ourselves into bed earlier and like giving ourselves actual designated wind down time, because like for me, it was always this pattern I was in of like, it would get to a point where I had, watched X number of TV episodes, and it would be like 11 p.m. and I could press the next button on the episode, or I could like get my ass to bed, and I would always just let it happen, like just let it autoplay, and it would be this kind of like sabotaging thing that kept happening, where I was just like, well, I'm whenever I lie down and close my eyes, all of the anxiety that I've been pushing away, it comes up, and I don't want it. So I will just distract myself and consume TV and stay awake watching the TV until it gets to a point, not that I'm so tired, but that it's late enough that I recognize that like I'm gonna be fucked up tomorrow, and then I have to go to bed, and now I feel guilty about it because I did a bad thing and stayed up too late, and so now I'm like, it's really late and I have to go to sleep, and I know that I have to go to sleep, but I'm not tired, and so it would just always be this like it was like this really guilt-ridden task that I knew that I had to go to sleep, but I so didn't want to.
Yeah. That rings a bell for me. I think because I have not succeeded and I have been kind of in that like guilt spiral the past maybe like week or so of just kind of like, I'll do my like face washing routine, get into my pajamas, like fill up my water bottle, do the things that are like not in my bedroom, that is like to get ready for bed, and then I'll like lay on my couch with my phone and like start scrolling through something, and it leads to that same like guilt of like, oh fuck, now I'm at a place of like I'm gonna feel worse tomorrow, or I might oversleep my alarms tomorrow, like because I'm a chronic alarm oversleeper, like my body does not hear them. I'm a deep sleeper, I guess. But that guilt is really interesting to me, of like our ability to like withstand that guilt, or almost like need it in order to take action.
Yeah, it's
dark.
I mean, it's not like a super nice motivator to have, but
No.
it is the one that I have for most things that I do. But for bedtime, I remember discussing this with you. Like I think my main goal the past couple of weeks was just to like create a bedtime that I would enjoy. Like create a nice bedtime for myself, like tuck myself in, instead of
Did
like,
you do it?
yeah. And yeah. I mean, I will like get into bed. I don't know. I think the melatonin has really, I'm like really in love with it. I will get into bed all cozy, having done, skincare and pajamas, and feeling like I'm a baby and I'm ready to go to sleep. And I kind of like trust, I like sort of surrender the fight of having to, you know, oh, well, it's time to go to sleep, but what if I'm not tired? And then the anxiety comes up, and instead I'm just like, I will be tired. I will be tired, and I will go to sleep. Melatonin will take care of me. And so I'm like, melatonin is now my parent, and that is tucking me in. And I will like get into bed. I will, you know, I will take the melatonin gummies, and I will chew them really mindfully, really, you know, slowly and mindfully. And then we have these like lamps that will dim on a timer. And so it becomes this sort of like countdown to night where like I get in bed, and the lights are they're slowly dimming, and the melatonin is slowly kicking in, and I just do crossword puzzles on my phone. And I know that's not allowed, New York Times, but they're
your crossword puzzles.
I need to do my crosswords, and I do my crosswords, and as I'm doing them and getting sleepier and sleepier, it just happens, and then I'm sleepy, and then I go to sleep. It's so nice. It's so nice. And now I really enjoy it. I'm like, I look forward to it, and it's not like a struggle. And I think it's literally very little has changed except for the fact that I'm now taking melatonin. So I don't know. I don't know if this counts as like I've created a practice, but now I don't know. I enjoy it now. What have you done? So how did you change your bedtime practice this past couple weeks?
So in the first week, I left my phone in another room to stop the news scroll spiral of doom. I love it. I love not looking at the news. And now my news consumption is more limited, but I feel fine with that right now because the anxiety that comes with the state of the world is so paralyzing that I know it's just not productive for me.
Right. It's not like you're not trying to like stay in a bubble of not total ignorance of what's going on in the world, but do you have to consume that information before bed?
No, not at all.
Not a good time for it.
No. And I don't want to do that when I wake up in the morning either. And like that would also be something I would like reach for and do. So I did that, and I'm very happy with that. I also started reading because we talked about last week our routines from childhood, and kind of I never thought of that as being a template for a routine now. Now I'm not commuting. That was the place where I had transferred all of my reading once I moved to New York. So, and I like love reading on the subway, but now that I don't have that, I wasn't reading and just was kind of like, I don't know how to read anymore. What happened? So I instituted a pre-bedtime reading time, which was going great. But then I decided to read A Little Life, which is a very depressing book that is just a book of trauma. It is 700 plus pages of really bad child abuse. It was so sad, and every time I picked it up, I was like, I have to finish this like scene. I can't leave this open-ended, but I need to know what happens. Like, this is so sad. And the book is very well written. It really like pings into a lot of like nostalgia things about it's just, don't read it. Definitely don't read it.
I don't plan to.
Good.
I don't like to consume media that makes me feel things. Yeah. Have you finished it?
I finished it, but I ended up staying up until like 2 a.m. a few nights because I was just like, I need to keep reading. And like, it's kind of rare that you find a book that makes you want to stay up and also makes you sad. And I mean, it was a bit of a relief to be like, oh, I'm feeling sad about something not current state of the world. And now I'm reading. So I finished that, and my bedtime routine was kind of, or the time of which I would go to bed was like all out the window, and like I'd screwed up my schedule, and like it's always hard to get back into a time, especially like for me, someone who sleeps through alarms, like getting up with my alarm is something that I've always struggled with. So there's no necessary like feedback or nothing to kind of like kickstart the routine that I want. And then I started reading a book by Otesha Moshfegh, who's a talented writer, but her stories there's always something really surreal and often disturbing in them. She wrote My Year of Restive Relaxation, and then this one is Death in Her Hands. And it's just making me really sad. It's a big bummer. Like, I thought it was going to be, like, a fun murder mystery, and it, like, kind of is, but it's also just not. Like, spoilers, like, hit fast forward 10 seconds if you want to read the book. But, like, it's just about an old woman kind of losing her mind after her husband dies when she's living alone. And and it's also about how, like, America sucks, and so I like get to bed and I'm like, all right, I'm really happy to be reading, but oh, this is a bummer and I just want to read it, but now I'm just kind of like agitated from this. So maybe I just need to stick to reading like interior design magazines before bed, because I love reading or like having a book in my hands.
Yeah, I think that you should have a pleasure. Have like incorporate pleasure into bedtime. Not that like there can't necessarily be pleasure in you know, painful literature, but you know, sometimes you want kind of dumb art to consume and not serious art. I say as a maker of sometimes pretty serious art, but yeah, I mean, it uses a lot of, it can be exhausting and not in a sleepy nice bedtime way, but in like a having to do extra to make up. I mean, I don't know, there are people, my partner for one, who like will watch a TV show together or a movie and a bad sad thing happens in it, and then we go to sleep and I'm like still crying about the thing and I'm thinking about it all night and I'm like, oh, but that thing happened to that person, and he's like, no, it didn't, it was fictional, it did not happen, and it didn't even happen to you, even if it did happen, so like it's fine. And I'm just like, will be consumed by like the feelings and experience of a fictional character, and so I like, it's too, I don't know, my brain is too permeable for like consuming art and literature and the, you know, media that like matters and is real. Yeah, I need like dumb stuff, like dumb and nice. Yeah, I'm wondering, like, I love another friend of mine is reading the biography of Eve Babbitt's. And have you read anything by her? Mm-mm. This is becoming an episode also about books. It is, yeah. Which I'm fine with because I love books. They do bring me so much joy. I don't really read books. I don't really read books. Book. Plural. I love like an Eve Babbitt's because it's just about like LA and sunshine and sleeping with rock stars, and like I love a book that's like depositing you into a world that I'm probably a little nostalgic for aesthetically, and then just like you go into that world, you're like, ah, yes, beach time, I am soaking up my vitamin D, now it's time for bed, how wonderful. And then I guess I happen to reach for opposite books while trying to focus on bedtime. But yeah, I'm the same way. I've always been such a big book reader, and I remember reading like something that was written in a Southern accent, and I started thinking in a Southern accent when I was reading this. I think it was a Faulkner book. I was reading it. It was assigned in high school, and I remember just being on a road trip reading it and being like, I'm thinking in a Southern accent now. This is weird. Like, but that, like, I think it's that same kind of like permeable to the stories that like are really captivating to us, which can affect bedtime negatively. Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think that I'm a person who finds reading relaxing. It's like stimulating. It's in the same way that TV or films or, you know, yeah, like any story, I think, will not make me sleepy. It will make me want to know the rest of the thing that happens. And so it's what I have found nice to read before bed is like boring nonfiction stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, like, and I'm not talking about like smart nonfiction, like no history, you know, but like in the kind of like for example, by my bed is The Gift. Do you know that book?
I think I read that in middle school.
It's neat. It was gifted to me, and it's about you know gift giving cultures and like how gifts function in various types of societies, and then it kind of ends up or pivots to, I'm not all the way through it, but it's really about, actually it's about like creativity and creative practices and how creativity like or inspiration or art comes from kind of is itself a gift that is given to us, and then we then pass it on, the gift cycle of gift. I don't know. Creativity.
That sounds nice.
Gift give. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's pretty good for falling asleep, so I don't really remember. I'm not paying super good attention to it because I'm like also falling asleep. Yeah.
That's the thing with nonfiction books for me, is that reading them before bed, I just like am not excited. So it's not for me, the act of like reading in bed is a treat and something to look forward to and something to motivate me to get into bed. But for nonfiction, that motivation mostly disappears.
Right.
But this is all making me think that maybe I should be more intentional in the books I read before bed, because I think it's something that I've always loved and always will love. And just being mindful of when I read certain books, or if I pick up a book and I'm interested in it and then it's super activating and sad.
Yeah,
I can read that during the daytime.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's just like you're now kind of being mindful about your consumption of like the news and media, and it's the same kind of activation as like reading a really stimulating or a really sad or a really like triggering book.
Yeah. That's
so.
an epiphany.
Have you been? Yeah. It's not just reading. It's like you read the stuff on your phone. Like you read the news, but it's not in and of itself like a relaxing treat. It's like the things that you decide to put in front of your face to consume. Yeah. And to create a nice bedtime atmosphere.
Yes. I will say, not having screens in my bed, if I lay down in bed during the day, I get so sleepy. I feel like I've done it long enough that I get the Pavlovian response of like, oh, the bed is for sleeping. And when you lay down in the bed, it is for, even if I can't fall asleep when I'm taking a nap, it is for like relaxation and like mind calmness.
Oh yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, I think that's what they call like sleep hygiene. I say with air quotes, like sleep hygiene, that like your bed is only for bed stuff, not for table stuff, and not for like, then it's just for bed stuff. and that you keep it only for bed stuff, and I think that also includes like working and screens.
Yes. So I am good at sleep hygiene. I have room for improvement in bedtime practice.
Yeah, I think this is like, for me, it's just been a first step in like beginning a bedtime practice or like creating one from out of nowhere. But
Yeah.
So do you keep your phone like in a different room?
I keep it. Rooms in my apartment are a loose term. There are no
Yeah.
like real doors here except for the front door. But I keep it in my living room on my like desk. The table I'm sitting at now, it's my desk / dining table. Right now it is covered in stuff and I really want to clean it. But so I just keep it out here. It's kind of where I keep my laptop. When I come out and meditate in the morning, it's like right next to, I have a bunch of plants in my windowsill and I'll sit in front of that. So like I can kind of also like check my phone, but like not necessarily get like lost in the scroll when I sit down to meditate, which I like as well. It's nice to.
So okay. So then you have like you have non-phone alarms for waking up in the morning.
2. So even when I had my phone next to me, it means I would have 3 separate alarm machines. I have the light alarm clock, which is the most life-changing thing. I'm like least likely to sleep through that. And then I have a Sonos that's in my living room next to my couch, which is also very close to the foot of my bed. And that will play, I have a morning playlist that plays for like 2 hours every morning. I'm very burpy.
So can you describe like nitty gritty logistics of your bedtime? So I just want to get right into it. So
I love this.
So you now, at some point, you have kind of an alarm that signifies to you, hello, Krista, bedtime has arrived. And then
My Sonos.
Your Sonos.
At 11 p.m., we had talked about last week doing a 10 p.m. start my routine, which I haven't necessarily done. Because that's early. Like 10 p.m. is really early. And like, so it's like the alarm goes off at 11 and that is what I want to be my signal to like wash my face and brush my teeth and get into bed and start reading at 10 or at 11:30. But even like last night I ate dinner at like 9. Like my days have such lack of structure where I think all I'm doing is trying to like do things on my to-do list. And that will change soon once I start grad school. But I think, I don't know. So bedtime alarm starts playing the like Crooners and Cocktails Apple Music playlist at 11 p.m. And I go into I just painted my bathroom light yellow and it feels like a warm cocoon to like do my face. So I can do that. And I shower after I exercise. So like usually that's not right before bed then. But it's a matter of just like washing my face. If I feel like I sweat for some reason, I'll like take a cold shower. I did read somewhere that taking cold showers 2 hours before bed for like 3 minutes, like as cold as you can get it, helps with falling asleep. Or like like
a rapid change from like warm to cold, like increases melatonin production.
That makes sense.
I read this.
I love your melatonin research.
Yes.
And I also love a really, really cold bedroom. When I lived in Colorado in middle school and high school, I would leave my window open during the dead of winter when it was below freezing. And my parents were like, no, you're wasting so much energy and heat. But like our house was too hot. Like I couldn't fall asleep. Like I wanted to have a ton of blankets on me and I wanted all that weight. So like God bless weighted blankets.
I think we had zero control of of the climate in our apartment growing up. We just had like loud pipes that would start clanging on at some point in the morning. But like other than that, I don't ever recall temperature being a thing.
Could you like open a window if it got too hot in the winter?
But I think it just like was cold. No, it was like cold. It was really, really
wasn't
cold.
hot enough.
It was always cold. I think it was just always cold in our apartment. Like the heat only went on at like a certain time in the morning, and so any time before that it was just freezing.
Oh boy.
Anyway, sorry to take away from your
No,
just
I'm very
realizing like,
interested.
Yeah.
I'm always very interested to hear about the kind of small details that you experienced growing up in Soho in like the 90s.
Well, we had
But,
this,
like,
we
the
had
little
this
things
like
that.
we had this like huge like this industrial space heater that like hung in the corner of one of the rooms. So it was literally like when it was winter, it was a fan, but then you would like light a fire. I guess there was like a pilot light or something. I don't do not understand how it works, but yeah.
You were a kid.
And then,
you didn't have to turn it on.
yeah, but it was hot and it would blow down hot heat. It was like a space heater, but like big for like industrial spaces. And so there was a switch, and I would like wake up in the morning and like turn it on and just literally just stand in front of it. And I would just stand in front of it for like, until I was awake.
Oh.
That was, I guess that was my morning routine when I was a child. It's just like be freezing and then turn on the giant industrial heater and blast myself with like industrial heat and then just stand there.
It's extra funny because I'm picturing like your haircut now, which I know you didn't have, and you just shrunken. Like for some reason I can't picture you as a kid, just you now shrunk down.
I was very small, very, very small child. And for some reason I also thought that like, there's like a weird rule that, I'm sorry, I completely derailed your bedtime schedule.
But we'll get back to it.
There's like weird specific rules about bedtime, about children's pajamas. They have to say whether or not they're flammable. Mm-hmm. Which like
and buttons are a thing.
Yeah, there's a whole thing around it. But so I remember having these pajamas that I read on the tag that it said flammable, and so I would be I would not wear those pajamas in front of the heater because I was like, I'm gonna catch on fire if I stand in front of the heater in my flammable pajamas.
I mean, who's to say you wouldn't have? I think that was very wise of you.
Yeah. We'd also like after a shower or a bath, like you'd just go in your cold towel and like turn the heater on and stand in front of the heater. It was like a real source it was the hearth of my Soho apartment. Anyway,
I mean,
sorry.
Literally.
So cold. Cold is good for you for bedtime.
So cold. I love cold.
Yeah.
A true Scandi. I love cold. I can't remember what led to cold. Oh, so I always make sure part of my bedtime routine now, like I fill up my giant water bottle. I make sure I have like a lot of water. I mean, this is talking about bedtimes. There is no clear resolution to developing a bedtime practice. I think it's a practice that will be working on all our lives, and they'll change with our day jobs or where we live and all that good stuff.
It's really nice to think of bedtime as a practice. That is a shift in just framing that I hadn't considered. And I think even like last time we were talking about, I've like babysat for numerous families that all had their own bedtime rituals designed for the children that were really lovely. And so bedtime, it really is it's a practice. Like it's a ritual that gets repeated and is kind of tailored to the person and their needs. And it was just a thing that I never thought about. And so now it's really nice to like to design that for yourself.
It is.
Yeah, and I feel like my new best friend Melatonin is what is allowing me to actually be intentional about my bedtime, because I'm not. Yeah, it's good. It's been like freeing. Well, bedtime. Where should we leave bedtime? What's a good...
Well, I think it's good. Talking about bedtime in relation to this podcast, I think has been really informative to both of us to reframe bedtime as a practice, not as something to dread or something to have perfect, because I think there's something about having like the ideal bedtime routine that gets kind of bandied about and how it's talked about.
Yes, I'm going to win bedtime.
Yes.
I'm going to get a good grade in bedtime.
100% bedtime.
A plus bedtime. I did everything right.
2 thumbs up for me. Yeah, so not doing that I think has been really important for us, and really I'm very excited to go to bed tonight now. I will say that after talking about it with you too. And I'm really excited to do melatonin research to find a vegan melatonin gummy. I also have a really like strong urge to watch a horror movie tonight, and I know that's not going to help with bedtime, but I really want to rewatch the new Suspiria.
Well, you do you. I cannot watch a horror movie at any time of day. So
fair.
Yep.
Fair. What are your takeaways from bedtime focus?
Bedtime focus. I was really grateful to have this like couple weeks to attempt to create a bedtime practice and to like reframe the way that I think about bedtime, and I really gotta credit my main pal Melatonin, because we had conceived of this idea that we wanted to talk about the practice of bedtime, but and we'd been we tried it for like a week of let's establish some kind of bedtime routine, and we'll check in about that. And I was really struggling with it, and that was generating a lot of guilt for me, and I just wasn't doing bedtime good. And now that I've kind of found a way to remove some of that anxiety by actually ensuring that I will get to sleep at some point, it's just been, I just feel really happy to try different things around bedtime without, I don't know, the stakes feel lowered a little bit.
Yeah, which is such a really beautifully radical shift in your mindset around bedtime. I'm very impressed.
Totally. I was like, Krista, I hate bedtime, and now I like it. And I think the next things that I can do are try the other good bedtime tips, like no screens, and maybe read a thing, and maybe hot shower. This is not the end of my bedtime journey. Krista, what are your bedtime takeaways?
I'm very, very happy, and I hadn't thought of this before, to look back to bedtime routines as a kid and the history of my bedtimes, and to kind of go from concrete places of what has worked for me before, and pulling from that and using that as a starting point rather than all of these articles about what a bedtime should be. And that combined with looking at it as a daily practice of a bedtime routine, I think that's helped. I'm feeling a little conflicted about bedtime tonight, because I'm I still want to go and read my book that is causing me distress, that is causing me enough distress that I've flipped through to the last few pages, and I now know how it ends, because I was I don't want to sit with this uncertainty. But
well, it can be a before bed, but not directly before bed activity.
That's true. I could do that while I eat dinner.
Yeah, then do a nice face thing.
Yeah.
Skincare.
Yeah. You should just call them face things.
A nice face, a nice relaxing face thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have enough magazines too. I think my kind of next next things for bedtime is looking at mindful reading choices before bed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like the hygiene is there. And then also, like, listening to my Cocktails and Crooners music alarm that goes off at 11 and abiding by that and kind of saying that I will go to bed, head to bed at that time, start my routine at that time, and keeping my word to myself. I think that's a very big thing.
Yeah. Before this past couple of weeks of this, whatever we're calling it, bedtime thing, like, I don't think I've mentioned it, but we have pretty finely tuned bedtime conditions that we've created. We have noise machine, make a good noise for bedtime. We have heavy blanket. That's good.
We love heavy blanket.
Heavy blanket, noisy, good temperature. And so if I didn't go good to sleep, it was my fault. I did it wrong. Yeah, seems like it's not great. Seems not great.
Seems like I have a not great.
Yeah. Yeah. So now it's not my fault if I don't go to sleep good. It's because I know melatonin will tuck me and take care of me, so I can do all the nice things.
Because I stayed on YouTube before getting into bed. I have to figure out how to make it not my fault. Or to just put down the phone before when the alarm goes off at 11. The bedtime alarm. But that's interesting. We both have a lot of, we've already invested a lot of intention around the conditions of bedtime. Regardless of how they adhere to specific lists about what bedtime should be. We've we had already been in a place of like finding things to help, which helped to a certain extent, and then after that certain extent it was like became our faults again.
Well, it was never me who actively pursued the perfect bedtime conditions. This was my partner, who has perfected bedtime conditions, which I appreciate. It's very good and nice. And now, you notice it when you're not at home with all of your bedtime tools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing
But
like
now the
being at
missing
home in your own
piece.
bed. The melatonin piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the missing piece is in place. And, yeah, it's like the sensation of feeling sleepy is so nice.
It's so nice. It really is.
It was never a thing that I would ever get to like kind of enjoy. Like I never enjoyed the being sleepy. It was just a thing that like finally happened, instead of like being nice and being like, so nice and cozy and sleepy and what a nice feeling. And that's nice.
I'm getting sleepy thinking about it. It feels so good.
Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time on Practice with Krista and Kayla. Thanks to Xander Wickstrom for the use of our theme song, What Do I Do Now? A real bop.